The blizzard came without warning on Christmas Eve of 1878, transforming San Antonio, Texas into a landscape that belonged somewhere far north. And Delilah Nash stumbled through the white chaos with blood frozen to her sleeve, and a gun she had sworn never to touch again weighing down her coat pocket. She had been running for 3 weeks, ever since the night she pulled that trigger in a St. Louis boarding house, ever since Marcus fell with eyes wide and hands reaching for a throat that would never draw breath again. Self-defense. The women who saw it happen had sworn, but Delilah knew the law cared little for a woman's word against a dead man's reputation, especially when that man had been a banker's son. So she ran, trading her silk dresses for cotton and wool, her swept-up hair for a simple braid, her name for whatever she could invent in each new town. The trains carried her south and west, through territories where she prayed the telegraph lines had not yet spread her description, where the warm promise of Texas seemed like salvation from the cold shadow of her past. But now Texas had betrayed her with this impossible snow, this freakish storm that the locals would talk about for decades. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago, and her boots, fashioned for city streets rather than frontier survival, had soaked through before she had made it a mile from town. She had taken shelter in an abandoned shed at first, but when the wind tore half the roof away, she stumbled back into the white nothing, knowing that to stop moving meant to die. The horse appeared first, a large buckskin gelding that materialized from the snow like an apparition, and then came the man riding it, wrapped in a heavy coat with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. Delilah wanted to run, but her legs would not obey anymore, and she sank to her knees in a drift that came up to her waist. "Please," she whispered, though whether she was begging for help or for him to pass her by, she could not say. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, and strong hands gripped her arms, lifting her with surprising gentleness. "Can you hear me?" His voice was deep, rough from the wind, but there was genuine concern in it. "Miss, can you hear me?" Cold, Delilah managed through chattering teeth. "I have got you," he said, and then she was being lifted onto the horse, settled against a chest that radiated warmth even through layers of clothing. He mounted behind her, one arm securing her against him while the other handled the reins, and the horse began moving with careful, determined steps through the snow. Delilah drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of warmth and movement and a low voice murmuring steady reassurances. When she next opened her eyes with any real awareness, she was lying on a bed in front of a roaring fire, covered in thick quilts that smelled of cedar and soap. Her wet clothes had been removed, replaced with a soft flannel nightshirt that hung far too large on her frame, and her hair had been unpinned and spread across a pillow to dry. "Easy now," came that same deep voice, and she turned her head to see the man from the storm sitting in a chair beside the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 26 or 27, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of good whiskey in lamplight. A strong jaw showed a few days' worth of stubble, and there was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow that gave him a roguish appearance despite the obvious concern on his face. "Where am I?" Delilah asked, her voice hoarse. "My ranch, about 5 miles outside San Antonio," he said. "Name is Cole Matthews. I found you in the snow, figured you would not make it another hour out there. Thank you." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "I am Delilah. Just Delilah," she hesitated, then whispered, "Nash, Delilah Nash." He nodded slowly, as if understanding that the pause before her surname meant something. "Well, Miss Nash, you are welcome to stay until the storm passes. Looks like it will be another day or two based on how that wind is howling. I have never seen snow like this in Texas, not in all my years. I should not impose, Delilah said, though the thought of going back out into that frozen hell made her want to weep. You would not make it to the road, Cole said simply. And I would not turn out a dog in this weather, much less a woman who is half frozen. Rest now. I will make some coffee and something hot to eat. He rose and moved to the far side of the single-room cabin, where a cast-iron stove sat beside a simple kitchen area. Delilah watched him move with an easy competence, stoking the fire in the stove, setting a pot of coffee to brew, slicing salt pork into a skillet with quick, practiced movements. The cabin was sparse but clean, with walls of solid timber and a roof that kept out the howling wind. A few shelves held supplies and books. A gun rack near the door displayed 2 rifles and a shotgun, and a small table with 2 chairs comprised the only other furniture besides the bed and the chair he had been sitting in. You live here alone? Delilah asked, pulling the quilts closer around her shoulders. Just me and my horses, Cole replied, not turning from his cooking. Had a partner for a while, worked the cattle together, but he met a girl in Houston and headed that way last spring. Cannot say I blame him. This is not much of a life for a man who wants a family. It seems peaceful, Delilah said softly. Cole glanced over his shoulder at her, something shifting in his expression. It is that. Peaceful and lonely, 2 sides of the same coin, I suppose. The coffee finished brewing with a rich, dark smell that made Delilah's stomach clench with sudden hunger. She could not remember when she had last eaten a full meal. The past 3 weeks had been a blur of train stations and dusty roads, of spending precious coins on stage tickets rather than proper food, of fear turning her stomach too sour for appetite. Cole brought her a tin cup of coffee and a plate with fried salt pork, beans, and a thick slice of cornbread, all balanced with a cattleman's steady hands. It is not fancy, but it is hot and it will give you strength. Delilah sat up carefully, keeping the quilts wrapped around her shoulders, and accepted the offerings with genuine gratitude. The first sip of coffee was so good she nearly moaned, the heat spreading through her chest like liquid comfort. The food was simple but well prepared, and she ate with an enthusiasm that probably revealed too much about her recent circumstances. Cole settled back in his chair with his own plate and cup, eating in companionable silence while the wind screamed outside and the fire crackled with cheerful defiance. Delilah found herself stealing glances at him, noting the calluses on his hands, the way his shoulders filled out his rough cotton shirt, the small smile that tugged at his mouth when he caught her looking. You are not from Texas, he said after a while. It was not a question. Missouri originally, Delilah said, which was true enough. I have been traveling. Long way to travel in winter, Cole observed, his tone carefully neutral, especially alone. Delilah set down her coffee cup, her appetite suddenly deserting her. I had my reasons. I expect you did. He met her eyes steadily, and there was no judgment there, only a kind of patient understanding. I am not asking you to explain yourself, Miss Nash. A person's past is their own business as far as I am concerned. Something in Delilah's chest loosened at those words, some tight knot of fear she had been carrying for weeks. You are very kind. Not kind, just practical, Cole said with a slight shrug. This country was built by people running from something or towards something or both. I have no right to judge anybody's journey. What about you? Delilah asked, surprising herself with the question. Are you running from something or towards something? Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup as if it might hold answers. I suppose I was running once. From Tennessee, from a family that thought I should be a lawyer or a banker, from a life that felt like it was strangling me with expectations and proper behavior. I wanted space and freedom and a chance to build something with my own hands. He looked up at her, and that small smile was back. But I think maybe I have been running so long that I forgot what I was running toward. Funny how that happens. It is, Delilah agreed softly. She thought about St. Louis, about the boarding house and Marcus's hands around her throat, about the way time had seemed to slow as she reached for the gun that another girl kept under the mattress. She thought about the look in his eyes when he fell, surprise and betrayal, as if he had truly believed he had the right to take what he wanted from her. Sometimes running is all we can do. Until we find a place worth stopping, Cole said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up sharply. Their eyes met and held, and Delilah felt something shift between them, something fragile and new and terrifying. She looked away first, her heart beating too fast, and finished her coffee in silence. The storm did not let up that night or the next day. Cole insisted that Delilah keep the bed, while he made himself comfortable on the floor with extra blankets, positioned between her and the door in a way that felt protective rather than threatening. She slept better than she had in weeks, despite the unfamiliar surroundings, despite the very strange circumstances. There was something about Cole Matthews that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since before Marcus, since before she understood how quickly a man's kindness could turn to cruelty. When she woke the second morning, pale winter light was filtering through the single window, and Cole was already up, dressed, and pulling on his heavy coat. "Going to check on the horses," he said when he saw her stirring. "Storm has let up some, but there is still a few feet of snow out there." "I will be back soon." Delilah sat up, pushing her hair back from her face. "Can I help with anything?" "You can keep the fire going if you are feeling up to it," Cole said. "There is wood in the box and more just outside the door under the overhang. Otherwise, just rest. You are still recovering." He was gone before she could protest, slipping out into the white world beyond the cabin door. Delilah rose and dressed in her own clothes, which Cole had cleaned and dried by the fire during the night. The simple kindness of that gesture made her throat tight with emotion she could not quite name. She busied herself straightening the cabin, adding wood to both fires, setting coffee to brew the way she had watched Cole do. There was something meditative about the simple domestic tasks, something that quieted the constant anxiety that had been her companion for so long. She found herself humming, an old song her mother used to sing, and did not realize she was doing it until the melody filled the small space with unexpected warmth. Cole was gone for nearly an hour, and when he returned, he was covered in snow and grinning like a boy. "The horses are fine," barn held up well. "Lost part of the corral fence, but that is easy enough to fix come spring. The main road is completely snowed in though. Could be a week before anyone can travel it." Delilah's heart sank. "A week? But I cannot impose on you for that long." "You are not imposing," Cole said firmly, shrugging out of his coat and hanging it by the door. "Truth is, it is nice having company. I did not realize how much I talked to myself until I had somebody else to talk to." Despite her worry, Delilah found herself smiling. "You do seem to favor conversation." "My mother always said I could talk the legs off a mule," Cole admitted. "Drove my brothers crazy when we were young. They were the quiet, serious types, future lawyers and bankers, everyone. And then there was me, chattering away about horses and open country and anything else that came into my head." "Do you miss them?" Delilah asked, pouring him a cup of coffee. Cole accepted it with a nod of thanks and considered the question. "Sometimes. Miss my mother especially. She understood, I think, even if she did not approve of me leaving. But my father and brothers, they made their disappointment pretty clear. Told me I was throwing away every advantage, wasting the Matthews name on cow manure and dust. That must have hurt, Delilah said quietly. It did, Cole admitted. Still does if I am honest, but I could not be who they wanted me to be. And I figure a man has to live his own life, not somebody else's idea of what his life should be. Delilah thought about her own family left behind in Missouri. Her father, dead when she was 12. Her mother, remarried to a man who looked at Delilah in ways that made her skin crawl. Her younger sister, sweet Sarah, who had cried when Delilah left for St. Louis, but who had understood why she had to go. She had not been able to send word since that terrible night, had not dared to put anything in writing that might lead the law back to her. Sarah must think her dead or worse. You are thinking sad thoughts, Cole observed gently. Delilah blinked, realizing her eyes had filled with tears. I am sorry. I was thinking of my sister. I had to leave without saying goodbye, and she will be so worried. Maybe when the road's clear you can send her a letter, Cole suggested. Let her know you are safe. Maybe, Delilah said, though she knew it was too dangerous. Any letter could be traced, could bring the law down on wherever she was hiding. Better to let Sarah think her lost than to risk hanging for defending her own life. The days that followed fell into an easy rhythm that surprised Delilah with its comfort. She and Cole worked together to maintain the cabin and care for the animals, venturing out into the slowly melting snow to haul water from the pump and carry hay to the barn. They cooked together, ate together, talked for hours by the fire about everything and nothing. Cole told her about Tennessee and his childhood, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the first time he saw the open ranges of Texas and knew he had found his home. Delilah told him carefully edited versions of her own story, about growing up in Missouri, about her love of reading and music, about dreams of having a home of her own someday where she could live without fear. She never mentioned Marcus or St. Louis or the gun that still weighed heavy in her coat pocket, hidden away with her few other possessions. And Cole, true to his word, never pushed her for more than she was willing to share. But as the days passed, something grew between them that went beyond simple companionship. Delilah found herself watching Cole when he did not know she was looking, admiring the strength in his hands, the kindness in his eyes, the way he moved with such easy confidence through his world. She caught him watching her too, with an expression that made her pulse quicken and her breath catch. When their hands brushed reaching for the same cup or passing each other in the small space of the cabin, the contact felt electric, charged with possibility. One evening, nearly a week after Cole had found her in the snow, they sat together by the fire after supper, Delilah mending one of Cole's shirts and Cole whittling a piece of wood into what was slowly becoming a small horse. The companionable silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of flames and the soft scrape of his knife. Delilah, Cole said suddenly, and something in his tone made her set down the mending. I want to ask you something, but I do not want to scare you off. Her heart began to pound, a mix of anticipation and fear. What is it? Stay, he said simply. When the snow melts and the roads clear, do not go. Stay here with me. Delilah stared at him, unable to quite process what he was asking. Cole, I cannot just stay. I have no claim here, no right, and people would talk. Then marry me, Cole said, setting down his whittling and turning to face her fully. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a handful of days, but Delilah, I feel like I have been waiting for you my whole life. You fit here in this place with me. I see it in the way you move through this cabin like it is already home, in the way you talk to the horses, in the way you smile when you think I am not looking. You are running from something, and I will not ask what, but maybe you can stop running. Maybe you can build something new here, with me. Tears spilled down Delilah's cheeks before she could stop them. You do not know me, not really. You do not know what I have done." "I know enough," Cole said firmly. He moved from his chair to kneel beside hers, taking her hands in his. "I know you are brave and strong and kind. I know you sing while you work and you are gentle with animals, and you have not complained once about sleeping in a one-room cabin with a stranger. I know that whatever you are running from, you did not deserve it, because nobody with eyes as honest as yours could be truly wicked." "I killed a man," Delilah whispered, the truth finally breaking free. "In St. Louis. He attacked me, he was choking me, and I shot him. He died and the law wanted me, so I ran. I have been running ever since." Cole was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on hers. "Did you have a choice? It was him or me." "Then you made the only choice you could," Cole said. "And anyone who says different is a fool or a liar or both." "Delilah, I do not care about St. Louis or what happened there. I care about you, about the woman sitting in front of me right now. And I am asking if you will let me build you a future, something better than running and hiding and looking over your shoulder." Delilah looked into his eyes, those whiskey warm eyes full of sincerity and hope, and felt the weight of her past begin to shift just a little. "What if they find me? What if they come looking?" "Then we will face it together," Cole said. "But Texas is a long way from Missouri, and I do not think anyone is looking this far south for a woman who defended her own life. You could have a new start here, Delilah, a real one, with me." She thought about the weeks of running, the constant fear, the bone-deep exhaustion of never feeling safe. She thought about the cabin and the horses and the way Cole had treated her with respect and kindness from the very first moment. She thought about the possibility of a future instead of just survival. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Cole's face broke into a grin so wide and genuine that it transformed him, made him look younger and impossibly happy. He pulled her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles, then her palms, then drew her down from her chair so he could kiss her properly, his lips warm and gentle and full of promise against hers. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I will make you happy, Delilah Nash. I swear it." "I believe you," she said, and realized with a start that she meant it. The snow melted over the next few days, turning the landscape into a muddy morass that made travel difficult but not impossible. Cole rode into San Antonio to speak with the minister and file the necessary papers, returning with news that the town was abuzz with talk of the freak Christmas blizzard, and that several buildings had sustained damage from the weight of snow. He also brought back fabric for a dress, soft blue cotton that matched Delilah's eyes, and a hairbrush inlaid with mother-of-pearl that must have cost more than he could easily afford. "For the wedding," he said when Delilah protested the extravagance. "Every woman deserves something pretty on her wedding day." They were married on a cold but clear morning in early January, in the small church on the edge of San Antonio, with only the minister and his wife as witnesses. Delilah wore the blue dress she had sewn herself, her hair brushed until it shone and pinned up with simple elegance. Cole wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair still damp from washing, his hand steady as he slipped a simple gold band on her finger. "I, Cole Nathaniel Matthews, take you, Delilah Marie Nash, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice strong and sure. "I promise to provide for you, protect you, and cherish you all the days of my life." "I, Delilah Marie Nash, take you, Cole Nathaniel Matthews, to be my lawfully wedded husband," Delilah replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "I promise to stand beside you, support you, and love you all the days of my life." The minister pronounced them married, and Cole kissed her there in the little church, sealing promises that Delilah prayed they would both be able to keep. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, And for the first time since that terrible night in St. Louis, Delilah allowed herself to hope. Hope that she could build a new life. Hope that the past would stay buried in the snow. Hope that love could be gentle and good and real. The winter passed into spring, and Delilah settled into her new life with a gratitude that bordered on disbelief. She learned the rhythms of ranch work, the early mornings and long days, the satisfaction of mending fences and tending cattle and coaxing vegetables from the stubborn Texas soil. Cole was a patient teacher and an even better husband, treating her with a respect and affection that still sometimes brought her to tears. They worked on the cabin together, adding a second room that would serve as a proper bedroom, building furniture from rough lumber, making the space truly theirs. Cole brought home books from town, knowing how Delilah loved to read, and she spent her evenings by lamplight losing herself in stories of adventure and romance, while Cole worked on tack or accounts. Sometimes he would look up from his work and catch her reading, and the smile that crossed his face made her feel more valued than any jewel. At night, they lay together in their new bed, learning each other with a tenderness that made Delilah understand for the first time what intimacy was supposed to be. Cole was gentle and patient, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and desired rather than used. He learned what made her gasp and smile, learned the map of her body with reverent attention, and in return she explored the planes of his chest, the strength of his shoulders, the way he trembled when she kissed the scar through his eyebrow. "I love you," Cole whispered one night, his hand tracing lazy circles on her bare shoulder. "I know I said it when we married, but I need you to know I mean it more every day." "I love you too," Delilah replied, the words coming easier each time she said them. "I did not think I could feel this way after everything, but you make me believe in good things again." Spring brought its own challenges. The cattle needed to be rounded up and counted, the winter losses tallied, the new calves branded. Cole hired 2 temporary hands to help with the spring work. Young men from San Antonio who treated Delilah with polite deference and called her Mrs. Matthews with a respect that still felt surreal. She cooked for the men, hearty meals of beef and beans and fresh bread, and listened to their chatter about town news and gossip. It was through one of these conversations that she learned about the railroad expansion, about the new telegraph lines being strung across Texas, about the increased cooperation between law enforcement agencies across state lines. The news sent a chill through her, despite the warm spring afternoon, and she found herself looking over her shoulder again, that old fear creeping back. Cole noticed her change in mood that evening after the hands had ridden back to town. "What is wrong?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "You have been jumpy all afternoon." "The telegraph lines," Delilah said quietly. "If they connect Missouri to Texas, if someone in St. Louis sends word, they could find me here." "They would have to know to look," Cole pointed out. "And you are Delilah Matthews now, not Delilah Nash. You are a rancher's wife, living quiet and respectable. There is no reason for anyone to connect you to whatever happened in St. Louis." "Unless someone recognizes me," Delilah said. "Unless someone from Missouri comes through San Antonio and sees me and remembers." Cole was quiet for a moment, then tightened his arms around her. "Then we will deal with it. But Delilah, you cannot live your whole life afraid of what might happen. You have to trust that you are safe here, that we are building something good that nobody can take away." Delilah wanted to believe him, tried to let his confidence soothe her fears. But that night she dreamed of St. Louis, of Marcus's hands and the gun's recoil, and the sound of footsteps coming down the boarding house hall. She woke gasping, and Cole held her until the shaking stopped, murmuring reassurances into her hair. The summer was blazingly hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and the cattle seek shade under every available tree. Delilah learned to work in the early morning and late evening, conserving her strength during the brutal midday hours. She also learned that she was pregnant, a discovery that brought joy and terror in equal measure. "A baby," Cole breathed when she told him, his hands coming to rest on her still flat belly. "Delilah, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, searching his face. "Happy," Cole laughed, pulling her into a spinning embrace that made her squeal. "I am over the moon, I am walking on air, I am the luckiest man in Texas." He set her down carefully, suddenly worried. "Are you happy? Are you scared?" "Both," Delilah admitted. "Cole, what if something goes wrong? What if I am not a good mother? What if the past catches up with us before the baby is born?" "Then we will figure it out together," Cole said firmly. "But nothing is going to go wrong. You will be a wonderful mother, and the past is going to stay where it belongs. This baby is our future, Delilah. The future we are building together." She wanted to believe him, and most days she did. As her belly grew and the baby made its presence known with flutters and kicks, Delilah found herself falling in love with this tiny life she and Cole had created. She sewed baby clothes from soft fabric, prepared the second room to serve as a nursery, accepted advice and hand-me-downs from the women in San Antonio who had gradually accepted her into their community. Mrs. Harriet Perkins, the minister's wife who had witnessed their wedding, became a particular friend. She was a motherly woman in her 50s who had raised 6 children of her own and who took Delilah under her wing with brisk competence and genuine affection. It was Mrs. Perkins who explained what to expect during labor, who brought over her daughter's old cradle, who promised to be there when Delilah's time came. "You are doing well, dear," Mrs. Perkins said one afternoon in late summer, watching Delilah knead bread dough with practiced ease. "I remember when Cole first brought you to town for the wedding, you looked like a frightened rabbit, but now you have bloomed into a proper rancher's wife. He chose well." "I am the one who chose well," Delilah said softly. "Cole saved my life in more ways than one." Mrs. Perkins patted her hand, her eyes knowing. "A good marriage is built on mutual salvation, I think. We all need saving from something, and we all need someone who sees us clearly and loves us anyway." The words stayed with Delilah long after Mrs. Perkins had departed. She thought about them that evening as she and Cole sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, his hand resting on her belly to feel the baby kick. "You ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Marrying me so fast, taking on whatever trouble I might have brought with me." Cole turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Delilah Matthews. You and this baby, you are my whole world now." "Even though you barely knew me." "I knew enough," Cole said. "And everything I have learned since has just confirmed what I felt that first night in the snow, that you were meant to be here with me, building this life together." Delilah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steadiness that had become her anchor. "I was so lost before I found you, running with no destination, just away, always away. And then the snow came and you came, and suddenly I had a reason to stop running." "The snow buried your past," Cole said quietly, "and I hope I have built you a future worth having." "You have," Delilah whispered. "You truly have." The baby came in October, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and turned the ranch roads into rivers of mud. Mrs. Perkins arrived on horseback, her medical bag strapped to her saddle and her expression grimly determined. Cole paced the main room like a caged animal while Delilah labored in their bedroom, her cries cutting through him like knives. "Is she supposed to sound like that?" he demanded of Mrs. Perkins when she emerged to fetch more water. "Should it be taking this long? First babies take their time," Mrs. Perkins said calmly. "And yes, she is supposed to sound like that. Your wife is doing the hardest work there is, bringing new life into the world. Now make yourself useful and boil more water." It was nearly dawn when the baby finally arrived, a lusty boy with a full head of dark hair and lungs that announced his displeasure at being born. Mrs. Perkins cleaned him efficiently and wrapped him in soft blankets, then placed him in Delilah's arms while she tended to the afterbirth and checked for complications. "A son," Delilah breathed, looking down at the tiny face with wonder. "Cole, we have a son." Cole knelt beside the bed, his eyes wet with tears he did not bother to hide. "He is perfect. You are perfect. God, Delilah, I have never been so scared in my life." "Me neither," Delilah admitted with a tired laugh. "But it was worth it. Look at him, Cole. Look at what we made." They named him Daniel, after Cole's grandfather, with the middle name of James for Delilah's father. Daniel Matthews, born in a thunderstorm on a Texas ranch, the first chapter in the future his parents were building. The first year of Daniel's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Delilah had worried she would not know how to be a mother, but instinct and determination carried her through. She nursed Daniel and sang to him, changed his diapers and soothed his tears, marveled at every milestone. Cole was a devoted father, equally comfortable holding his son while Delilah caught a few hours of sleep or making funny faces to earn one of Daniel's gummy smiles. The ranch prospered too. Cole hired a permanent hand, a quiet young man named Tom who lived in the small bunkhouse Cole had built near the barn. With the extra help, Cole was able to increase the herd and negotiate better prices in San Antonio. Money was still tight, as it always was for small ranchers, but they were making it work, building something solid. Delilah's fear of discovery faded as the months passed into years. She became known in San Antonio as Mrs. Cole Matthews, the pretty young mother who made the best sourdough bread in the county and who could sometimes be persuaded to play piano at church socials. Nobody looked at her and saw a fugitive from Missouri. They saw a respectable wife and mother, exactly what she had become. Daniel was 2 years old when Delilah discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news brought only joy, no terror, and Cole celebrated by buying her a rocking chair he could not quite afford and promising to add another room to the house before the baby arrived. "We are becoming a proper family," he said, his hand on her belly where their second child grew. "Everything I dreamed of when I left Tennessee, this is it. This is what I was running toward all along. I just did not know it until you came stumbling out of that snowstorm." "Best blizzard Texas ever had," Delilah said with a smile. "Amen to that," Cole agreed and kissed her soundly. Their daughter arrived in the spring, an easier birth than Daniel had been, and with a temperament as sunny as an April morning. They named her Rose, and she quickly wrapped both parents and her big brother around her tiny fingers. Daniel was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, and Cole would often find him standing by the cradle making up songs or telling her stories that made no sense but which Rose seemed to find delightful. Life was good, better than Delilah had ever imagined possible. The ranch was thriving, the children were healthy, and her marriage to Cole deepened into something richer and more complex than the desperate gratitude that had marked its beginning. They knew each other now, knew each other's moods and fears and dreams, and the knowing only made the love stronger. But the past, Delilah learned, was never truly buried. It only lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. It was a hot afternoon in June when the stranger rode into San Antonio asking questions. Delilah was in the general store with Rose on her hip, and Daniel clinging to her skirts when she overheard the storekeeper talking to another customer. Some fellow from Missouri Territory, asking about a woman who might have come through a few years back. Had a description and everything, said she was wanted for murder. Delilah's blood ran cold. She turned slowly, keeping her face carefully blank, and pretended to examine a display of ribbons while she listened. "Murder?" the other customer said, scandalized. "What kind of woman?" "The dangerous kind, I reckon," the storekeeper replied. "Said she shot a man in St. Louis, some banker's son, and ran before the law could catch her. Fellow seemed real determined to find her, said there was a reward." "Well, I hope he finds her someplace far from San Antonio," the customer said firmly. "We do not need that kind of trouble here." Delilah forced herself to complete her purchases with steady hands, to smile and make small talk with the storekeeper, to walk out of the store without running. But as soon as she loaded the children into the wagon, her hands started shaking so badly she could hardly gather the reins. She drove home too fast, the wagon rattling over the rough road, Daniel looking at her with worried eyes. "Mama, what is wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart," Delilah lied. "Mama just wants to get home to Papa." Cole was in the barn when they arrived, and the moment he saw her face, he dropped the harness he had been mending and strode toward her. "What happened?" "Inside," Delilah managed. "The children." She got Daniel and Rose settled with bread and jam at the kitchen table, then pulled Cole out onto the porch where little ears could not hear. "There is a man from Missouri in San Antonio. He is asking about me, Cole, about the murder. There is a reward." Cole's face went hard in a way she had never seen before. "Did anyone connect you to the description?" "I do not know," Delilah said, fighting tears. "I left before anyone could say anything. But Cole, what if someone remembers me from church or from town? What if they put it together?" "Then we will figure it out," Cole said firmly. "But nobody is taking you anywhere, Delilah. I will not allow it." "You might not have a choice," Delilah whispered. "If the law comes with proof, with a warrant, you cannot stop them. And I will not ask you to break the law for me, not when we have children to think about." Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "Those children need their mother, and I need my wife. We will find a way through this, I swear it." But as the days passed, the situation only grew worse. The stranger from Missouri, a bounty hunter named Frank Wade, began showing Delilah's description around town in earnest. He had a sketch, an artist's rendering based on descriptions from St. Louis, and while it was not exact, it was close enough to be concerning. Several people told him they could not help him, but Delilah knew it was only a matter of time before someone made the connection. She and Cole debated running, packing up the children and heading west to California or north to the territories, where law was more suggestion than reality. But running meant abandoning the ranch, everything they had built, and it meant teaching their children to live as fugitives. The thought made Delilah sick. "There has to be another way," she said one night, lying awake beside Cole in the darkness. "There has to be some way to make this right." "What if you went back?" Cole asked quietly. "What if you went to St. Louis and faced it, told your side of the story?" "They would hang me," Delilah said flatly. "Cole, I killed a banker's son. It does not matter that he attacked me. It does not matter that I was defending my life. The law will see a dead white man with money and connections, and they will see me, and that will be that." "Unless there were witnesses," Cole said. "You said other women saw what happened. Would they speak for you?" Delilah thought about the other girls at the boarding house, most of them working girls and factory workers, women whose testimony would be easily dismissed. "I do not know if they would be believed, and I do not know if they would even be willing to come forward after all this time." They fell into troubled silence, and Delilah listened to Cole's heartbeat beneath her ear, steady and strong, the sound that had become home to her. The decision was taken out of their hands 3 days later when Frank Wade rode out to the ranch with the San Antonio sheriff. Delilah was hanging laundry when she saw them coming, and for a moment she considered running, just bolting for the barn and a horse and anywhere but here. But Daniel and Rose were playing in the yard, and she could not abandon them, so she stood her ground and waited. Cole emerged from the barn, Tom close behind him, and positioned himself between the riders and Delilah. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Cole Matthews, the sheriff asked. He was a middle-aged man named Bill Carson, someone Cole had done business with in town, someone who had always been fair. "I am afraid we need to speak with your wife." "About what?" Cole asked, though his tone said he already knew. Frank Wade spurred his horse forward, ignoring the sheriff's warning look. He was a hard-faced man with cold eyes and a gun worn low on his hip. "Your wife is wanted for murder in Missouri. I have a warrant for her arrest." "That is ridiculous," Cole said flatly. "My wife is a respectable woman, a mother. You have the wrong person." "I do not think I do," Wade said, looking past Cole to where Delilah stood frozen by the laundry line. "She matches the description, right down to that little scar on her left hand. I would bet money she is the woman I am looking for." Sheriff Carson dismounted, his expression uncomfortable. "Mrs. Matthews, I am going to need you to come with me into town so we can sort this out. I am sure it is just a misunderstanding, but Mr. Wade here has legal papers from Missouri, and I am obligated to investigate." "She is not going anywhere," Cole said, his hand moving toward the gun at his own hip. "Cole, do not," Delilah said quickly, moving forward. She could not let him get into a gunfight with the law, could not let their children see their father shot or arrested. "It is all right, I will go." "Like hell you will," Cole said, but Delilah put her hand on his arm, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "I have to," she said quietly. "For the children, for us. If I run now, we will never stop running, at least this way we can try to sort it out legally." "They will hang you," Cole said, his voice breaking. "Maybe," Delilah admitted, "but maybe not. Maybe there is a way through this." Sheriff Carson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Matthews, I give you my word that you will be treated fairly. We will hold you in San Antonio until we can get word back from Missouri about exactly what happened and what kind of case they have. If you are innocent, the truth will come out." "And if the truth is not enough?" Cole demanded. "Then we will cross that bridge when we come to it," Carson said. "But I am not letting Wade here take her across state lines without proper investigation. This is Texas, and we take care of our own." There was some comfort in that, however small. Delilah looked at her children, Daniel watching with frightened eyes, Rose oblivious in her toddler innocence, and felt her heart break. "Cole, take care of them. No matter what happens, take care of our babies." "I am getting you out of this," Cole said fiercely. "I do not care what it takes, I am bringing you home." Delilah kissed him quickly, tasting salt from tears she had not realized she was crying, then turned to Sheriff Carson. "I am ready." The jail in San Antonio was a small building with 3 cells, currently empty except for Delilah. Sheriff Carson gave her the cleanest cell, brought her blankets and decent food, and allowed Cole to visit every day with the children. But the bars were still bars, and every day that passed without word from Missouri felt like a lifetime. Cole hired a lawyer, a sharp young man from Houston who specialized in defending women in difficult situations. His name was Patrick Sullivan, and he listened to Delilah's story with careful attention, taking notes and asking pointed questions. "The key is going to be proving self-defense," Sullivan said. "If we can get testimony from the women who witnessed the attack, if we can show a pattern of violence from the deceased, we might be able to convince a judge that you acted in defense of your life." "And if we cannot?" Delilah asked. Sullivan's expression was grim. "Then we hope for mercy from the court. But I will be honest with you, Mrs. Matthews. Missouri wants to make an example of this case. The dead man's family has money and influence, and they have been pushing hard for justice, as they see it." "Justice?" Delilah repeated bitterly. "They want revenge, not justice." "Perhaps," Sullivan agreed, "but we are going to fight them with everything we have." Word finally came from Missouri after 2 weeks that felt like 2 years. The responding telegram confirmed that Delilah was indeed the woman wanted for the death of Marcus Thornton, that there was a warrant for her arrest, and that Missouri was demanding her extradition to stand trial. But the telegram also included something unexpected: a letter from several women who had lived at the boarding house, women who swore they had witnessed Marcus attack Delilah and who were willing to testify on her behalf. "This is good," Sullivan said, reading through the letter with obvious relief. "This is very good. With this kind of testimony, we can argue for the case to be heard here in Texas rather than sending you back to Missouri. Texas courts are more likely to be sympathetic to a woman defending herself." "Can we do that?" Cole asked. He had been at the jail every day, sometimes for hours, refusing to leave Delilah's side except when forced. "Can we keep her here?" "We can try," Sullivan said. "It will require some legal maneuvering, but Texas has jurisdiction since this is where she was apprehended. If we can convince a judge that sending her back to Missouri would result in an unfair trial, we might be able to hold the proceedings here." It took another month of legal wrangling, of telegrams flying back and forth between Texas and Missouri, of Sullivan arguing passionately in front of judges and filing motion after motion. Frank Wade fumed and threatened, demanding his bounty and accusing Texas law of corruption and favoritism. But Sheriff Carson stood firm, and the Texas judge assigned to the case, a hard-nosed former ranger named Abraham Stone, refused to be intimidated by pressure from Missouri. Finally, in late August, Judge Stone ruled that Delilah's case would be heard in San Antonio, that the witnesses from Missouri would be brought to Texas at state expense, and that the trial would commence in September. It was not freedom, but it was a chance, and Cole clung to that like a drowning man to driftwood. The trial was the talk of San Antonio, packing the small courtroom to capacity. Delilah sat beside Patrick Sullivan at the defense table, wearing her best dress and keeping her spine straight despite the terror churning in her gut. Cole sat in the front row directly behind her, his presence a constant comfort, and Mrs. Perkins had taken charge of Daniel and rose so Cole could attend every moment of the proceedings. The prosecution laid out their case with cold efficiency. Marcus Thornton, they said, had been a respectable young man, the son of a prominent banker, engaged to be married. He had been shot in a boarding house by a woman he barely knew, a woman with a history of employment in questionable establishments. They painted Delilah as a seductress, a woman of loose morals who had lured Marcus to her room and then killed him, possibly to rob him. Sullivan objected repeatedly to the prosecution's characterization, and Judge Stone sustained most of the objections, warning the prosecutor to stick to facts rather than speculation. But the damage was done, and Delilah could feel the weight of judgment from the courtroom. Then Sullivan called his witnesses. First came 3 women from the boarding house, working women with worn hands and honest faces. They testified, one after another, about Marcus Thornton's reputation for bothering the women who lived there, about complaints that had been made to the landlady, about the night Delilah had screamed and they had rushed to her room to find Marcus dead, and Delilah sobbing in the corner with bruises already forming on her throat. "He was choking her," said a woman named Betty, her voice firm despite her nervousness. "We all saw the marks. She could barely speak for days afterward. Her throat was so damaged. That man was trying to kill her, and she did what she had to do to survive." The prosecution tried to discredit the witnesses, implying they were covering for a friend or lying to protect a fellow woman of questionable character. But Sullivan was ready, producing medical records from a doctor who had examined Delilah after the incident, records that documented severe bruising consistent with strangulation, defensive wounds on her arms, and emotional trauma. "This was not murder," Sullivan said in his closing argument, his voice ringing through the courtroom. "This was a woman fighting for her life against a man who believed he had the right to take whatever he wanted from her. Every one of us has the right to self-defense, the right to protect our own lives when threatened with violence. Delilah Matthews, then Delilah Nash, exercised that right on a terrible night in St. Louis, and she has been running from injustice ever since. It is time for this court to recognize the truth of what happened, and to let this woman return to her husband and children, to the good life she has built here in Texas." The jury deliberated for 3 hours that felt like 3 lifetimes. Delilah sat in her cell, Cole beside her holding her hand through the bars, and waited for the verdict that would determine her fate. If they found her guilty of murder, she would hang. If they found her guilty of manslaughter, she would spend years in prison, missing her children's childhood, losing the life she had built. Only a verdict of justifiable homicide or self-defense would set her free. When the bailiff finally came to bring her back to the courtroom, Delilah's legs barely held her. Cole walked beside her, his hand on her back, steady and strong. The courtroom was packed again, everyone standing as Judge Stone entered and took his seat. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Stone asked. "We have, Your Honor," said the foreman, a weathered rancher from outside San Antonio. "What say you? We find the defendant, Delilah Matthews, not guilty by reason of self-defense." The courtroom erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting, and Judge Stone had to bang his gavel repeatedly to restore order. Delilah could not breathe, could not think, could only stand there in shock as the words penetrated: "Not guilty. Self-defense. Free. Mrs. Matthews," Judge Stone said, looking directly at her, "this court finds that you acted in defense of your own life against an unlawful attack. The charges against you are dismissed, and you are free to go. I hope you will put this behind you and continue to be the upstanding member of our community that you have proven yourself to be." Then Cole's arms were around her, lifting her off her feet, and she was crying and laughing at the same time. Patrick Sullivan was shaking their hands, grinning with obvious satisfaction. Mrs. Perkins pushed through the crowd with Daniel and Rose, and suddenly Delilah had both her children in her arms, Daniel crying and Rose babbling in confusion but happy, because everyone else was happy. "It is over," Cole whispered in her ear, his own voice thick with emotion. "It is truly over, Delilah. You are free." Frank Wade left San Antonio that evening, his bounty unpaid and his pride wounded. Delilah never saw him again, and she could not say she was sorry about that. The people of San Antonio, for the most part, rallied around her in the aftermath of the trial. Some still whispered, still judged, but most accepted Judge Stone's ruling and welcomed Delilah back into the community as one of their own. The ranch felt like paradise after the weeks in jail. Delilah walked every inch of it, reacquainting herself with the land, the horses, the simple rhythm of daily life. She held her children for hours, unable to let them out of her sight, and Cole understood, giving her space to heal from the trauma of arrest and trial while staying close enough to catch her when the nightmares came. "I thought I was going to lose you," he admitted one night as they lay together, finally alone, finally able to just be husband and wife again. "When they took you away, I thought that was it, that I had lost the best thing in my life." "You did not lose me," Delilah said, pressing close to him. "You saved me, Cole. Just like you did in the snow, you saved me again. Your faith in me, your refusal to give up, that is what got me through." "We saved each other," Cole corrected gently. "That is what love does. It saves us from the things we cannot face alone." Delilah thought about the past few years, about the terrified woman who stumbled out of a blizzard and into a cowboy's care, about the life they had built together against all odds. The snow had buried her past, just as Cole had said on that long-ago evening on the porch. And Cole had built her a future, a real one, with children and a home and love that had proven strong enough to weather even the threat of the gallows. "I want more," she said suddenly, the words surprising even her. "More what?" Cole asked, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "More everything. More children if we are blessed with them, more years together, more mornings waking up beside you and more evenings watching the sunset from our porch. More life, Cole. I want all the life we can have together." Cole smiled against her hair. "Then that is what we will have. All the life we can fit into the years we are given, and then some." The years that followed proved him right. The ranch prospered as Cole's reputation as a fair dealer and skilled cattleman spread. They hired more hands, expanded the herd, built a bigger house with separate bedrooms for the children and a proper parlor for receiving guests. Daniel grew into a serious boy who loved books and horses in equal measure, already showing signs of inheriting his father's easy way with animals. Rose was sunshine personified, charming everyone she met, with a talent for music that delighted her mother. Delilah and Cole had 2 more children, another son they named Samuel and a daughter they named Clara. The house rang with laughter and chaos, with the constant noise of a growing family. Delilah sometimes stood in the middle of it all and marveled at how far she had come from that desperate woman in the snow, how completely her life had transformed. She stayed in touch with the women from St. Louis who had testified on her behalf, sending them letters and small gifts at Christmas, grateful for their courage in speaking truth when it mattered most. Betty came to visit once, spending a week at the ranch and delighting in the peace and beauty of the place. She left with tears in her eyes, hugging Delilah fiercely and whispering that seeing her friend happy and free made everything worthwhile. Cole's family eventually reached out, his mother sending a tentative letter asking if she might meet her grandchildren. Cole was wary at first, old hurts still tender, but Delilah encouraged him to reconcile. They traveled to Tennessee when the children were old enough for the journey, and while Cole's father remained distant and disapproving, his mother welcomed them with open arms. The reconciliation was not complete, but it was a beginning, and Cole found a measure of peace in knowing his children would know at least one set of grandparents. San Antonio grew and changed around them, the railroad bringing new people and new ideas, the frontier gradually becoming more settled and civilized. Through it all, the Matthews Ranch remained a constant, a place of hard work and family and love that had been forged in crisis and tempered by trial. Delilah never forgot what she had escaped, never took for granted the miracle of her freedom and her family. But the nightmares faded over the years, replaced by dreams of the future, of grandchildren someday, of growing old beside the man who had believed in her when the whole world seemed determined to see her hang. One evening in the spring of 1895, 17 years after that impossible blizzard, Delilah and Cole sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Daniel was 23 now, working the ranch alongside his father and courting a sweet girl from town. Rose was 21, engaged to a young lawyer in San Antonio and planning a summer wedding. Samuel was 14, all long limbs and earnest enthusiasm, while Clara, at 12, was already showing signs of the beauty and stubbornness she had inherited from both parents. "We did good," Cole said softly, his hand finding Delilah's in the space between their rocking chairs. "We did," Delilah agreed. "Cole, do you ever think about that night, the blizzard finding me in the snow all the time?" Cole admitted. "I think about how easily I could have missed you, could have ridden a different direction or stayed in the barn that night. I think about how lucky I am that the snow came when it did, that you stumbled into my life exactly when you did." "I think about it too," Delilah said. "About how close I came to dying out there, about how my life could have ended before it really began. And then you appeared like something out of a dream and everything changed." "The snow buried your past," Cole said, echoing words he had spoken so long ago. "And you built me a future," Delilah finished, squeezing his hand. "The best future I could have imagined. Thank you, Cole Matthews, for seeing something worth saving in a desperate woman in a blizzard." "Thank you, Delilah Matthews, for trusting me enough to stay," Cole replied. "For building this life with me, for giving me these beautiful children, for loving me even when the world tried to tear us apart." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set in shades of gold and crimson, painting the Texas sky with colors that never failed to take Delilah's breath away. The sounds of their children's laughter drifted on the warm evening air, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied, the sounds of a working ranch that was also a home. Rose's wedding that summer was the social event of the season in San Antonio, a beautiful ceremony that brought together friends and family from across Texas. Delilah cried as she watched her daughter marry, remembering her own hasty wedding in that same church 17 years earlier, remembering how terrified and grateful she had been. But Rose was radiant with joy rather than fear, marrying a good man who clearly adored her, beginning her own future with hope rather than desperation. "Our baby is all grown up," Cole whispered to Delilah during the reception, watching Rose dance with her new husband. "They all are, or nearly so," Delilah replied. "When did that happen?" "While we were busy living," Cole said with a smile. "While we were building this life we have." Daniel married the following year, bringing his bride Sarah to live at the ranch. She was a practical woman with a kind heart, and she fit seamlessly into the Matthews family. When she gave birth to a daughter 9 months later, making Delilah and Cole grandparents for the first time, the joy was almost overwhelming. "A granddaughter," Delilah breathed, holding the tiny bundle with reverent care. "Cole, we have a granddaughter." "We do," Cole agreed, looking down at the baby with wonder. "What did they name her?" "Eleanor," Daniel said proudly, his arm around Sarah. "Eleanor Ruth, after both grandmothers." The name brought tears to Delilah's eyes. To be honored this way, to have built a family that considered her worthy of passing down her name, felt like the final confirmation that she truly belonged here, that the frightened fugitive in the snow had been transformed into someone of value and dignity. The years continued their steady march, bringing more grandchildren, more changes, more life lived fully and deeply. Samuel became a teacher, taking a position at the growing school in San Antonio, a choice that surprised everyone but which suited his gentle, scholarly nature. Clara inherited the ranch alongside Daniel, proving herself as capable as any man when it came to handling cattle and horses and the hard work of frontier life. Cole's hair went silver at the temples, then gray throughout, but his eyes remained as warm as ever when he looked at Delilah. She found strands of white in her own hair, lines around her eyes and mouth that spoke of years of smiling and occasional tears. They aged together, their bodies changing but their love deepening, becoming something richer and more complex than the desperate attraction that had sparked in a snowstorm. On a warm evening in the spring of 1910, 32 years after that impossible Christmas blizzard, Delilah and Cole celebrated their anniversary with their children and grandchildren gathered around them. The ranch house was full to bursting, loud with conversation and laughter, and Delilah looked around at all the faces she loved and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. "Speech," Daniel called out, raising his glass. "Come on, you two, say something." Cole looked at Delilah, his expression asking if she wanted to speak. She shook her head with a smile, gesturing for him to go ahead. Cole stood, his glass in hand, and waited for the room to quiet. 32 years ago, I found this woman dying in a blizzard," he began, his voice still strong despite his years. "I brought her home and I asked her to stay, and somehow, miracle of miracles, she said yes. Everything good in my life since that night has come from that decision, from Delilah choosing to stop running and start building a future with me. So I want to thank her, in front of all of you, for giving me the life I always dreamed of, but never quite believed I would have. For these children, for these grandchildren, for every day of the past 32 years. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Delilah Matthews, and I would go through that blizzard 1,000 times if it meant finding you at the end." There was not a dry eye in the room, and Delilah rose to stand beside her husband, taking his hand in hers. "I cannot top that," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "So I will just say that Cole Matthews saved my life in every way a person can be saved. He gave me a home when I was homeless, a future when I thought I had none, and a love that has sustained me through everything. The snow buried my past that night, and Cole built me a future that has exceeded every dream I ever dared to have. I love you, Cowboy. Today, tomorrow, and for whatever time we have left." They kissed to applause and cheers, and the celebration continued late into the night, filled with music and dancing and the joy of family gathered together. The years that followed brought inevitable sorrows along with their joys. Cole's mother passed peacefully in Tennessee, and Cole made the journey one last time to lay her to rest. Mrs. Perkins died at the impressive age of 83, mourned by everyone in San Antonio who had benefited from her kindness and wisdom. Tom, who had worked the ranch for nearly 3 decades, retired to a small house in town that Cole bought for him, a thank you for years of loyal service. But life continued, as it always does, bringing new grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren, bringing new challenges and new triumphs. Daniel and Sarah's children grew up and had children of their own. Rose's lawyer husband became a judge, and her sons followed him into the law. Samuel married late, to a fellow teacher, and they adopted children who needed homes. Clara married a cowboy as stubborn as she was, and together they expanded the ranch to twice its original size. Through it all, Delilah and Cole remained the center of their family, the foundation on which everything else was built. They were the story everyone told, the romantic tale of the blizzard and the desperate woman and the cowboy who saved her. Their great-grandchildren begged for the story over and over, and Delilah would tell it, carefully edited for young ears, ending always with the same words. "And your great-grandfather built me a future, and that future is all of you." Cole died first at the age of 81, peacefully in his sleep beside the woman he had loved for more than 50 years. Delilah woke to find him gone, his hand still holding hers, his face peaceful and free of pain. The grief was staggering, an amputation of part of her soul, and for a time she wondered if she could survive without him. But her children and grandchildren rallied around her, reminding her that Cole lived on in all of them, in the ranch he had built, in the family they had created together. And Delilah understood that her job was not finished, that she still had a role to play in the future Cole had built for her all those years ago. She lived another 5 years, filling her days with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with tending the garden she had planted decades earlier, with sitting on the porch and watching the Texas sunsets that had never lost their beauty. She told stories about Cole, keeping his memory vivid and alive, making sure that everyone who came after would know the kind of man he had been. Delilah died in the spring of 1918 at the age of 78, surrounded by family in the house Cole had built for her. Her last words were, "I am coming, cowboy," spoken with a smile, and those who heard them swore there was joy in her voice rather than fear. They buried her beside Cole on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The entire town of San Antonio seemed to turn out for the funeral, testament to the life she had lived and the woman she had become. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single inscription chosen by their children. The snow buried her past. He built her a future. Together they created a legacy of love. The ranch continued for generations after, passing through the family, changing and evolving but always remaining the Matthews place, always carrying the story of its founding in that impossible Christmas blizzard of 1878. The great-great-grandchildren who never knew Delilah or Cole still heard the stories, still understood that their family had been forged in crisis and tempered by love, that it had begun with a desperate woman and a cowboy with a generous heart. And sometimes, on winter nights when the wind blew cold across the Texas plains, people swore they could see two figures on the porch of the old ranch house, sitting side by side and watching the stars, a man and a woman still keeping watch over the future they had built together, still proving that love could overcome anything, even death, even time, even the impossible distance between a blizzard and a forever. The story of Delilah Nash, who became Delilah Matthews, and Cole Matthews, who saw a woman worth saving in a snowstorm, became the kind of legend that Texas specializes in, a tale of second chances and redemption, of love strong enough to change destiny. It was told at weddings and around campfires, passed down through generations as proof that the best things in life often come from the most unexpected places, that sometimes salvation arrives on horseback in a blizzard, that sometimes a future is built from the frozen remnants of a buried past. And in San Antonio, in a small cemetery on a hill overlooking a ranch that still bore their name, two headstones stood side by side, marking the resting place of two people who had found each other against all odds and built something that lasted far beyond their mortal years. The snow had buried her past. The cowboy had built her a future. And together, they had created a love story for the ages, a Wild West romance that proved that sometimes the best thing a person can do is take in someone lost in a storm and offer them a chance to begin again. Their legacy lived on in every child and grandchild, in every acre of the ranch, in every sunset watched from that porch where they had spent so many evenings planning their future. It lived on in the courage to start over, in the willingness to trust after betrayal, in the choice to build rather than run. It lived on in the simple truth that love, real love, is not found in perfect circumstances or ideal conditions, but in the willingness of two imperfect people to build something better together than they ever could have created alone. The Matthews Ranch stood for more than a century, a monument to what two people could create when given a second chance, when offered grace instead of judgment, when choosing love over fear. And though the original cabin was eventually replaced by larger buildings, Though the children and grandchildren made their own changes and improvements, there remained always a sense of the original spirit, the foundation laid by a woman fleeing her past and a man willing to help her build a future. In the end, that was what endured, what mattered, what made their story worth telling and retelling through the generations. Not the drama of the trial or the romance of the snowstorm rescue, though those were part of it, but the deeper truth beneath it all, that Cole Matthews had looked at a desperate, frightened woman and seen someone worth saving, worth loving, worth building a life with. And that Delilah Nash had looked at a lonely cowboy and seen safety, honor, and the promise of home. Together they had created something that outlasted them both, a family and a legacy built on the simple but profound foundation of choosing each other, every day, for more than half a century. The snow had buried her past. The cowboy had built her a future. And their love had created a forever that no blizzard, no trial, no hardship could ever diminish. That was the story of Delilah and Cole Matthews, and it was a story that would be told as long as there were people who believed in second chances, in the redemptive power of love, and in the truth that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected blizzards.